You know there's concern from the Europeans that President Zelenskyy is going to be bullied into signing something away. That's why you have these European leaders coming as backup tomorrow. Can you
No, it isn't. That's not why they're coming as back. That's not true. No, but that's not that's not true. They're not coming here tomorrow to keep Zelenskyy from being bullied. This is such a stupid media narrative that they're coming here tomorrow because Trump is going to bully Zelenskyy into a bad deal. We've been working with these people for weeks on this stuff. They're coming here tomorrow because they chose to come here tomorrow. We invited them to come. We invited them to come. The president invited them to come.
The next day.
Let's work on that and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever it takes place.
Well, there you have it. President Trump sitting side by side with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy in the Oval Office. The two leaders striking a cordial, collegial tone and also somewhat optimistic. Of course, a notable change in tone from the last time they met, that explosive blow-up that they had in the Oval Office back in February. Back then, President Trump berating the Ukrainian leader, accusing him of not being grateful enough for American support. Instead, today, the two leaders side by side trying to chart a path forward to finally end this war. President Trump saying he thinks there's a reasonable chance of ending the war. He repeatedly said he's focused on achieving lasting peace.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about President Trump's historic meeting with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelenskyy, and the leaders of Europe at the White House following his meeting with Vladimir Putin in hopes of bringing this war between Ukraine and Russia to an end. Now, the mainstream liberal media up until this point has been rooting against President Trump, okay? The treasonous media has been out in full force, basically trying to undermine the president, claiming that he's folding to Putin, even though Trump is not really folding to Putin. I think that some people are just acknowledging the reality of the situation between Russia and Ukraine and who has the leverage and who doesn't have the leverage. In my opinion, I think as of right now, Vladimir Putin has most of the leverage, right? If not all of the leverage. And there's only really so much that can be done outside of what Putin is demanding in order to get peace, okay? And I think that that's a slow realization that some people are coming to, which is that, yeah, Zelenskyy, the Europeans, and the United States of America, to a certain extent, when it comes to leverage over Putin to end this war, I don't think that we have all that much, right, in regards to helping Ukraine not give up any land. So I want to talk about this meeting because it seems as if President Trump is bringing us closer to potential peace, okay? And this meeting apparently went so well at the White House that you have Trump-deranged individuals and mainstream liberal media actively praising President Trump for the way that he handled this meeting and how it went. Take a look.
Well, the bottom line is it's clear that these conversations are productive. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, his first remarks were this has been a really good conversation. That in itself is a major difference from where we were at this time 6 months ago after that blow up inside the West Wing and the Oval Office between Presidents Zelenskyy and Trump. Significantly after that, we also heard from Zelenskyy, who appeared to express an openness to a conversation about territorial boundaries. So what, if any, boundaries will be changed as a function of this? On the topic of ceasefire, you and I, our eyebrows raised quickly as we saw some of the other leaders push the president on this idea of a ceasefire. The president has made clear he thinks they can go directly to a peace deal. You'll remember the president came into that meeting with Putin saying that, hey, we want to have a ceasefire by the end of this. More than 14 Ukrainians have died in the time since that. So is a ceasefire something that they're open to, or is there the ability to get to that peace deal soon enough? And then finally, I think something that's particularly striking, we should note, it almost feels like they're serving for lunch praise and gratitude, right? A lot more thank yous to Donald Trump this go around here. But at the end of all of it, I think clearly it looks like the president has a very condensed timeline. He wants this to happen quickly. He mentioned the word trilat multiple times. His takeaway from his conversations with Vladimir Putin was basically that I believe he wants to get a deal, whether it's for me because of the personal relationship or to put this to an end. He seems to believe that Putin would be on board with some sort of an agreement. Is there a place where these two sides can meet?
Just a note about President Trump's demeanor and The charisma that he projected today, I thought that it was really heartening, and I was very proud of him. When you think back to Alaska just a few days ago, what memory do you bring, aside from the visuals, obviously, was Melania Trump, our elegant First Lady, underrated First Lady, coming forward with that letter, her own letter of her own initiatives, hand-delivered to Vladimir Putin. He read it, and U.S. aides were watching as he read it, where she implored him basically to make peace for the good of the children. And on the issue of children, we have to make sure that Russia is not rewarded for the crimes that it has committed. And one of the most egregious, as you have been reporting, Hannah, is this the missing children, the missing Ukrainian children, 20,000 to 40,000 of them snatched from what is now occupied Ukraine, taken to Russia where they're Russified. The brainwashed not to speak the Ukrainian language, taken from their parents. I just think that it's beneath contempt. It is horrible what President Putin has done.
Yeah,
I think this was a very positive meeting, and whoever had the idea to bring all these European leaders together, in addition to President Zelenskyy, that was a brilliant idea. And having it come so quickly after Alaska was also very important, because now they've changed the talking points here. Just in this meeting alone, they've walked back some of the positions that the president was echoing when he met with President Putin. So this is very positive progress. The fact that they're talking about a ceasefire again, Chancellor Merz brought it up in particular. There's no logic. I want to underscore this idea that a ceasefire gets in the way of negotiations, that is not historically true. And why should people continue to die while they're negotiating? So I'm glad that's back on the table. And second, the most important thing is that they're talking about security guarantees with European soldiers being a part of that. That is major progress with American assistance. I myself would like NATO guarantees rather than NATO-like guarantees. But if you have to compromise, I think this is an important compromise and a step forward.
I give President Trump tremendous credit for where we are. And if he is able, again, to engineer this deal, we've been saying for weeks on this show, I would be the first. I would hope you would invite me down to the White House when the president is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, because he would absolutely deserve it.
Greg.
Yeah, seen that, you heard that. Okay, Nobel Peace Prize. That is what people are saying now as President Trump tries to end this war. Now, I want to go ahead and react to some of the takeaways from these meetings that, by all accounts, went very well, right? And who knows? It looks like we're probably going to get some follow-up meetings. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this, because like I told you guys during that Putin meeting, don't listen to the mainstream level media. The gauge for how well that meeting went will depend on the meetings that happened afterwards, right? If there's a bunch of follow-up meetings, if you're seeing progress, then you know that initial meeting was successful. So again, we're going to see what happens, but progress seems to be getting made here.
The fate of the war in Ukraine and peace on the European continent hanging in the balance today at the White House. President Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy along with a lineup of European leaders just days after his pivotal sit-down with Vladimir Putin. No big Oval Office blow-ups like last time. It was very calm, and they made inroads on a possible trilateral summit deal between Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S.
First of all, thank you for your invitation, and thank you very much for your efforts. Personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war. Thank you.
This isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening.
First of all, Mr. President Zelenskyy, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's I remember that. No matter what I do, no matter what, and this is not anything to do with you. It's probably to your advantage in a certain way. But no matter what I do, no matter what deal I make, from my standpoint, you'll come out good. Maybe President Putin will come out good. But they'll say, Trump was absolutely horrible. I used to get great publicity. Now I get the worst publicity anyone's ever gotten in office. And
yeah, I mean, he's right about that, right? In regards to no matter what happens with this deal, okay, whatever deal is made outside of Ukraine taking some of Russia's territory, right? Because let's say that this war ends, okay? Trump can get a peace agreement in which President Putin withdraws all of his troops from the Ukrainian territories that they've already taken, right? Let's say they go back to the lines that they had pre the war starting. If that happens, which again is very unlikely that's going to happen, the media will say, well, Trump didn't allow Ukraine to take Russian territory, right? That's what I'll say. So it doesn't matter what the ultimate deal is here. They're going to say that Trump got rolled over by Putin. When the reality is that there is really not that much that can be done or that the President of the United States can do in order to make Putin give up on some of his demands, right? That's why these people who continue to go to the mainstream liberal media boo, whine, and crowd about, well, I haven't heard Putin give any concessions. I'm concerned Putin's not giving anything up. And I'm I'm like, why would he have to give anything up in order to achieve peace when the Ukrainians are in the weaker position? Now, I would say that the Europeans want peace more than Russia, but I can't even say that with a straight face because at this point, I don't think that the Europeans and the foreign policy establishment in the United States of America want peace, right? And they would rather see Ukraine fight it out to the end rather than for Russia or for Vladimir Putin to get a win. So my point is that these people that keep talking about why is Putin not making any concessions, well, it's because he doesn't have to. Right? He has all the leverage at this point. At the end of the day, the only outcome of this war outside of a peace agreement, if the war is allowed to continue, is for Russia to eventually continue to take more of Ukraine's territory, right? And who knows? Maybe they just may take over the whole thing if they have to fight it out to the end. And that certainly would be a worst case scenario for the Europeans and NATO, right? Because Ukraine certainly won't be a part of NATO, and Russia will have expanded a lot more than where they're at right now.
There have been some absolutely major shifts. The idea that Ukraine's going to achieve complete victory, that idea has collapsed within Ukrainian society. What are we talking about here? Ukrainians on the war versus Russia. You go back to 2022, the start of the war. Fight until Ukraine wins. Look at this. The vast majority, about 3/4, 73% agreed with that position. Negotiate to end the war as soon as possible, only 22%. Look at where we are now. It's a complete flip. It's the inverse. Now 69% want to negotiate to end the war as soon as possible, compared to just 24% who want to fight until Ukraine wins. That's a 49-point drop in this position. Now, of course, negotiating to end the war as soon as possible, that's a bit more nuanced, right? Ukrainians don't want to agree to all of Russia's demand, but I think the idea of even there being some territory that would be not formally recognized as being given that Russia could in fact stay in, that does have majority support, but the idea of formal recognition of Russia's demands, absolutely not.
All right. Why do you think that opinion has changed to the extent that it has?
Well, I think one of the big reasons why opinions have changed is this idea that this war is going to end anytime soon. Ukrainians don't think it will. Take a look here. Ukrainians on the war ending within a year. Just 25% say that it is likely. Look at this. 68%. 68% say it is unlikely that the war will, in fact, end in a year. And you'll notice, John, this 68% looks a heck of a lot like this 69% who say that they want to negotiate to end the war as soon as possible.
So President Trump overnight ruled out Ukraine joining NATO, seemingly ever. But what do Ukrainians feel about that?
Yeah, you know, obviously Ukrainians would like to join NATO. That has been a goal of theirs for a number of years. But the idea that that NATO admission will happen within 10 years, look at the collapse in this position. 2022, it was 64%. Now it is just half that level at 32%. So again, this is one of the goals that, Ukrainians had since the beginning of the war. They no longer believe that it's achievable. Well, the idea that Russia is going to be forced out of all of that land that they're occupying, they don't necessarily believe that that is going to happen. So again, I think this is one of the reasons why Ukrainians, they certainly don't want to accede to every Russian position, certainly not most of them, but the idea that they do want to negotiate and end to this war as soon as possible, that has now gone through the roof. Again, we're talking about 69%, which is such a big difference from where we were at the beginning of the war when it was just 22.
Wanting to negotiate doesn't mean wanting to surrender.
Correct.
It means wanting to discuss, and not believing that they'll join NATO is different than wanting to join NATO.
You got it.
But you can very much see how Ukrainian thinking has changed over the last few years.
Absolutely, John.
Harriet, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that Putin knows this. Okay, I think Putin knows that in the long run, Russia has a significant advantage, and that's why they don't have to really make any real concessions, because the alternative to continuing the war is for the Ukrainians to continue to lose lives until they can't fight anymore. So, I mean, that's essentially where we're at. And people have to accept that as a reality, that Ukraine may just be better off cutting their losses now and getting peace, and then trying to hopefully prevent this from happening again, rather than to continue to fight it out for an outcome that is extremely unlikely.
Made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened.
Later on, President Trump holding a family photo with European and NATO leaders, and then a roundtable where there was plenty on the agenda, everything from possible land swaps to Russia agreeing to accept security guarantees for Ukraine.
I believe that in a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table.
Hi, Jesse. Welcome back.
It's good to be back around the table.
So one thing that is really interesting is that under President Biden, remember the line was over and over again, as long as it takes. But if you think about it, initially, they didn't give them the weapons they needed to win. They just slow walked that and dribbled it out over time. And now no one is arguing for the continuation of the war, not even Putin or Zelensky.
And that's a good thing. And it's a good thing that Zelensky wore a suit or a semi-suit. People say that's trivial, Jesse. Why do you care what he wears? I care because it's a sign of respect. And the American people agree with me. And it's also a sign that he stepped up his suit game of warming relations between Trump and Zelensky. Remember, a couple months ago, they had the big, nasty blow-up. And what did we say at the time? You know, deals blow up and they get put back together. Guys fight and then they patch it up. Not like women.
They patch it up at the Vatican.
Women hold grudges, Dana. Could you imagine Kamala Harris doing this type of diplomacy, flying to Alaska, bringing all these world leaders to D.C.? She could never have pulled it off. Not because she's a woman, Dana, because she's Kamala Harris.
She'd be in duty-free most of the time.
Yeah, I cannot imagine Kamala doing this. I can imagine Joe Biden doing it. I can imagine any Democrat doing it. And that's why I think even the biggest Trump haters in the media, low-key, have to give him a little bit of credit here when it comes to what he's doing. It's because we don't see this, right? We don't see this type of cojones on the world stage. Again, if a Democrat was in office, they would just continue to give Ukraine weapons. There would be no serious attempts at diplomacy, at trying to come to the same table or getting Putin at the table to negotiate peace, or trying to get everybody in a room and to try to solve the problem. No, it'd be none of that. It'd be a complete standoff between the United States and Russia, and Ukraine and the Europeans are caught in the middle of it, right? And it would just be that, right? And we would have another 3 or 4 years, 5 years of a war guaranteed, that, again, the taxpayers will be footing. So, again, if President Trump can end this war, and to me, it doesn't matter what the terms are, right? I know the mainstream level media, again, they're trying to basically put stipulations on the agreement that can be made. But me personally, I think it's a W for Ukraine to keep what they got right now, right? I mean, if you pause everything right now, okay, with the territories that they have, with the territories that Russia has currently, yeah, I personally think that Ukraine is coming out on top, right? They coming out in a better situation than they otherwise would be if you allow this to continue, right? So again, I'm not seeing this as a loss for Ukraine if they got to give up land. I'm seeing this as Ukraine living to fight another day, or hopefully not to have to fight again. We're going to see about the security guarantees part, because President Trump, they're saying that, you know, maybe Putin will be open to that. But I know that Putin is not going to be open to Ukraine becoming part of NATO. But maybe, just maybe, there can be some kind of makeshift agreement where maybe, you know, the Europeans are guaranteeing Ukraine security without the United States being directly involved, right? Maybe it'll be something like that.
The war has lasted 3 years. Every war over the last 100 years has been longer. Both world wars, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. If he can patch this up this quickly, it would be an historic success. And how did he do it? I believe it was these secondary sanctions on Russian energy exports, because that was about 3 weeks after he did that. They had that phone call, and then they had this meeting. And also, these oligarchs want their yachts back. I always like to ask, when Jessica's here, not you, Harold, what is the Democrat plan? Because right now they're saying, armchair quarterbacking, you can't reward Putin for his naked aggression. So he can't keep the land he won on the battlefield. Okay, how are you going to get Vladimir Putin to relinquish the land he won in battle?
Facts.
The United States won lands in battle. We didn't just give it back. No country gives back land they win in battle. That's what this is all about. You have to accept reality, and that's what these Democrats are doing. Borders change all the time. You can't go back to the borders that Ukraine had. Think about Germany. It used to be the Prussian Empire. Then it was the German Empire. It expanded, it contracted in the world wars, and then they divided it in two. And now it's reunited. And they can't do this to Ukraine? Come on, that's ridiculous. Trump's just stopping the bleeding. Bill Clinton was the one that made Ukraine give away its nukes. Then he invaded Crimea under Obama's watch, and when Joe said don't, Vlad went in strong.
That's the crazy part about Democrats trying to compare Obama meeting Putin to Trump meeting Putin. They pull up pictures like this. They're like, oh, see, look at Obama. He's staring down Putin, right? Meanwhile, Putin taking territories, whole territories with Obama in office, right? Trump in office, though, right? Trump in office. Putin didn't take any territories. And on top of that, he might be thinking about peace, right? He might be thinking about ending this war, okay? See, again, you know, people don't understand what diplomacy actually is. I don't care about what leaders are liked, okay, by allies. What I care about is who's respected. Okay, respect takes you a lot further than being liked. A lot of people liked Obama, right? But clearly, Obama wasn't respected, okay? This right here is respect. And respect goes a long way, and that's what these people don't understand. That's what they don't understand about diplomacy.
Just there to patch things up. And he's doing it not by being bullied like the media says he's being bullied. Putin's bullied all these other Democrats in office. This guy threatened to nuke Moscow. Think about it. He was going to bomb the bejesus out of their capital if Vlad tried this on the last watch. He saw this coming, too. Remember Nord Stream? He said, no, no, no. He said, beef up your military in NATO, and he got it done. And now, if you can end this war now, and you can guarantee European soldiers to go onto the front lines if Vlad gets this dumb idea back in his head, and we get the minerals, and we get the drone technology out of the Ukrainian military, pretty good win.
Jesse, you're kind of...
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree, right? I mean, again, the media is going to frame it as, oh, Trump took an L, Ukraine surrendered because they had to give up land, right? Which they're going to have to do regardless, okay? Regardless, they're going to have to do that, right? But again, if we can get peace, if we can stop spending money on this, we can get access to the minerals, okay? If the Europeans can protect their own, right? If they can step it up and protect their own people, you know, I think that's a W, 100% a W. And also, we can establish better relations with Russia, right? I think that's also something that could be worth considering. Okay, I know that the mainstream liberal media and the foreign policy neocon establishment hates the idea of having better relations with Putin. But again, it makes sense if we really want to take on China, right? If China is the main focus, then it would make sense to try to get closer with Russia, if possible, maybe to try to separate them from China to a certain degree in order to benefit our long-term policy agendas. Okay, I think that we have much more concern with China than we do in Eastern Europe, and I think that's why we want to get this wrapped up, right? We want to get it wrapped up, okay? We want to be done with this and moving on to other things, right? So again, we're going to see what happens. Again, what I do know, and I'll stick to what I said when the President Trump-Putin meeting first happened, which is that, hey, you're going to know whether or not it was successful based off what happens after the meeting, right? How many meetings come after this? Who knows? They may not ever be able to achieve peace, but regardless, if you're seeing more meetings, okay, if you see them coming closer and closer to an agreement, then you know that, hey, at the very least, it was successful for getting the ball rolling. The details, again, the details need to be worked out, but getting the ball rolling seems to have been successful. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.